something similar on my channel maybe 6 months ago or something, where I said this isn't going to last forever. And once companies got a rebalance in power, they would start pushing people back into the office. And, here we are. I just saw some recent news that Apple is requiring, I think, starting in September, that the people are going to have to come into the office three times a week or something like that. And when it's a candidate driven market and there's a massive labor shortage, the employees tend to have all the power. And then as things shift and slow down and unemployment rate goes up, then, there's a balance, right? It's when unemployment's maybe 4 to 5%, there seems to be a good balance. When it's at record lows, it really tips over to the candidate side. When unemployment's high, it tips over to the company side. Things usually work best when things are in the middle. But you see there's stuff like the quiet quitting going on that was trending on, TikTok, where people are trying to do the absolute bare minimum and then not get fired. Like, you have to think that when these types of things are going on, the repercussion is the companies are going to bring you back in the office. They're going to put more metrics and KPIs on you because they got to stay in business. They got to make a profit, and it's not working. If I recall, I don't know the stats in front of me, but I want to say we're at like some crazy, 3 month decline of all time low worker productivity since 1947 or something. So if you're running a business right now and productivity is that low, and you see a recession's coming, or there's everything from a soft landing to a major crash is coming, and you have super low productivity, companies are starting to panic. And I just saw over on Kane's channel, a Daggerfin, that Apple is laying off some of the recruiters. I think Facebook laid some people off, and then Google talked about slowing and hiring and slowing and hiring. I can't speak today. They all see it coming, right? So do you think it's smart to do the quiet quitting thing right now? Do you think it's smart to get paid for 40 hours but only work 10 or 15? Um, if you really want to survive this coming recession, assuming it happens, you got to wake up. And, it's they're going to force you back in the office. Now, there's two things you can do right now. You can just offer to go back into the office, and then you're going to get some profile for that. Say, look, I want to come back to the office. I want to learn. I want to grow. You're better off doing that than waiting for them to force you back into the office. Because here's what's going to happen at Apple, for example. Apple's going to say, okay, you can come back in the office and work for Apple, or we'll let you go, and you're going to have to go work for somebody else during an economic slowdown or recession. Which one do you want to do? And this is where Apple's in the position of power now. And I think a lot of people, it's funny, what you read online is not usually what matches up with what managers and executives say. People online think like coming into the office is all about control. It's not. It's if you just get your work done, Apple wouldn't force you back into the office. And the problem is 20% of people at Apple probably kill it, and they get all their stuff done and they get their work done on time and they do solid work. And then there's probably a bunch of people who don't. And it's hard to manage all that. And if it was true that people were more productive from home, productivity wouldn't be so low. In fact, we're at like record lows almost. And it's just this thing where people on social media will say, I'm way more productive from home, and say, well, maybe you are, but statistically, productivity's in the tank right now. And the company's got to survive. It's, people got a lot of wage bumps. Things are very expensive. Apple's probably thinking right now, salaries went up, 10, 15, 20%, but productivity went down. You're not going to stay in business and stay competitive for a long time. So it's just one of those things that we're working on. One of my companies, a handful of my companies works with careers every day, from executive search, career planning, career coaching, college planning, outplacement service. Everything's very career related on that, within that group anyways. And we said what we're seeing talking to clients is that we're going to go from this like great resignation to the great firing. And what's going to happen is, and I kind of seen this happen. I mean, I've been through 3 recessions, if you've listened to my podcast before, as an entrepreneur and starting investing in businesses. Like, I survived the 2000 tech bust. I survived the 2008 bust out. Got through COVID. Been there, done that. Seen it, got the t-shirt, sold the t-shirt, started a t-shirt company. I've been there. I've seen it all. And what I see coming again, listening to clients, is when things slow down, as they are, they're going to start laying a lot of people off. And here's who gets laid off, and I've talked about this before. If you're one of the most recent hires, then there's a high chance you're going to be the first to go. The last in the door is often the first out the door, unless they really need you to fill that role. Excuse me. The next person that's going to go is the one that's overpaid. Now, you've been reading online, or you've been listening to people on LinkedIn and TikTok talking about these huge pay bumps. Companies had to pay people a lot more money to hang on to them. They didn't want to, and they couldn't afford to. And especially during an economic slowdown, they really can't afford to. So they're going to say, okay, who's overpaid? And they're also going to weigh the overpaid versus how productive you are. So if you're working from home and you're not as productive as you should be, and you just got that $20,000 pay bump, you're probably going to get laid off. And then the third person that's going to be in that bunch, the bare minimum people. I'm going to quiet quit. I'm not going to do anything extra. I'm not going to try to help the company grow. I'm not going to lift my team up. It's the people that really are barely breaking even. They're gone too. And then a lot of these people, they're going to say, hey, come back to the office or you're fired. So there will be a great firing at some point, or a great layoff, because things have to rebalance. And if you've been with a company 5 or 10 years, and you've been dependable, and you've been reliable, you're valued, your team members value you, you're going to probably be okay. These are the people that weather the storm. Remember, you have to make it through. If you get out of college, 22 years old, you're probably not going to retire till you're 62, 65. You have 40 years you're probably going to have to work. It seems like most people these days don't sit back and say, okay, how do I build a career that can last 4 decades? Changing jobs every year isn't going to get you there. It gets you a few more bucks now. It often gets you fired or let go a lot more often as well. Right now you're trying to say, if there really is a 2 or 3 year slowdown coming, which if you looked at the last manufacturing report coming up out of New York, I think it was New York, it was ugly. I'm watching layoffs. Our business that deals with laid off employees is booming right now. You don't see the news talking about it much because it seems like they only want to talk about positive stuff. It's coming. It's just, is it going to be a shallow recession or something more brutal? So my thought is, if you're not in the office, especially if you're at a big company, some of the smaller companies are, the environment's a little bit different. But these large companies, they want and need you back in the office to stay competitive. Get back in the office before they force you to get back in the office. Start getting as much done as you can and make sure you show as much value as possible. Trying to do the quiet quitting. What's funny is like people will often say that companies take advantage of employees. But then you listen to a TikTok video where you basically hear people say, I only work 5 or 10 hours a week, and then they take a check for 40. Somehow that's ethical, right? It's, again, in the long run, are you trying to build a career? Are you extremely ambitious? Are you trying to get somewhere? Or are you just trying to get as much money as you can for doing as little as possible right now? Now thinking about what your career is going to look like when you're 40, 45, or 50 years old, when the job market's a little tougher, it's harder to get hired, technology changes, will you have enough money for retirement? It's when I help someone, especially my friends' kids, and we're sitting down and we're trying to plan out a 40-year career. It's like we look at the people that went on to do great things. And we looked at, you don't ever look at the playbook from the people who failed and ended up broken miserable. It's let's go look at the playbook of the people that succeeded and did well and achieved their dreams, right? And you see a lot of the stuff you see on social media doesn't really coincide with the people that make it. So my thought is get back in the office, work as hard as you can, add as much value to the company and the conversation as you can, and kind of, buckle up because, the next 2 years can be a really bumpy ride. But again, like Apple's already at a point right now where they're saying you're back in the office 3 days a week, which doesn't seem like a bad deal. You come in, make sure you connect with your teammates, go through some training, really have a pulse on the company and the culture, and you still got 2 days at home. Doesn't sound like a bad deal. But Apple's at a point where it's, coming into the office where they're probably going to say sayonara. And they know that that's going to be their choice. Work for Apple or go change jobs in the middle of an economic slowdown. If you think that a bulk of the Fortune 500 companies or even the Fortune 1000s aren't going to do the same thing in the next 6 months, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But that's what it's going to come down to, because they're going to say, okay, if you don't want to come back in the office, unemployment's up to 5.5% now. We'll just go hire somebody else because there's more candidates in the market now. And back to the great firing. There's not a single business owner I haven't talked to in the last few months. When I ask them this question, because we're working on this article that's going to go out on some publications and news sites about the great firing, I ask them, and it doesn't matter if they're in a restaurant business, if they're in manufacturing, if they're in SaaS products, services, tech. I ask them this question: are you hanging on to people right now that you would love to fire but you can't? And they all say yes. Because having someone there even for 10 or 15 hours is better than having no one there, because they can't find anybody else right now. As soon as that changes a little bit, that great firing is going to happen. And maybe the damage is already done, but to those people that have taken advantage of, doing the quiet quitting or calling off all the time, working 10, 15 hours and trying to get paid for 40, maybe you got time to right the ship, maybe you don't. But I think there's a lot of people out there who took advantage of the situation in the last 2 years. And as soon as we have a slowdown, it is going to be very ugly. So anyways, it seems like Apple, I'm sure someone else has done it, but I just saw the news with Apple. It's like, well, here we go. They're going to push you back into the office, and they're probably okay with bleeding some people off because it'll be better than saying they had a mass layoff. So we're going to see what's going to happen. You got any thoughts or comments, leave some below. Again, my process for everything is trying to reach high goals. If you're a work-life balance person, which I think everyone should live however they want to live. If you're a work-life balance person, you might not like what I'm saying, which is fine. If you want to work 20 hours and you're happy, work 20 hours. I think that to each their own. My content's typically for people that are trying to have these amazing high-flying careers. They're trying to, create a startup and blow it up. They're trying to get to the top of the Fortune 500. That's the kind of content I do. And I try to give the advice look, if you're trying to, make director at 35 or VP at 38 at a big company, if you're trying to really just crush it, this is kind of where my viewpoint is. I didn't want to wait until I was 50 to be somebody. I wanted to get there at 28. And there's a big disconnect between what you see on social media and what really happens in real life. And I try to bring the real life content. Anyways, that's all I got for this one. I'll catch you on the next one.